Hey guys, it is Saturday here on Pagan Perspective. I am your host Brendan, and this week we are talking about media and its influence on our path and practice. So our question this week comes from Cara, and it's inspired by a blog post that she read, which I will put details in the bottom bit about. And it's about this blogger's experience with Harry Potter and how it's influenced their path and their journey. And Cara has pretty much put it out to us hosts to discuss any forms of media, whether it be movies or TV series or anything like that, that has really had an influence on our personal practice and our personal path. So I've written out a bit of a list on my phone, and a lot of them are double ups for people. For things that have already been spoken about this week by other hosts. So like, of course the obvious ones like The Craft, Practical Magic, Charmed, Buffy, Angel, Bewitched, Harry Potter, The Secret Circle. So those are the ones that, if I remember correctly, I've heard in this week. But I've added in some that, for me, have influenced my spiritual and personal practice that aren't necessarily witchy, but hold really strong spiritual values and practices within the series themselves. So the first that I have on my list is Avatar: The Last Airbender and Legend of Korra. So what it's really about is follows this it's an animated series by Nickelodeon originally, and I think it's still Nickelodeon, and essentially the world is made up of people called benders, which can influence elements. And there is, in each generation, there's one person born who is called the Avatar, and they can bend the four elements and have a deep connection between the human and spiritual worlds. So in the first series, Avatar: The Last Airbender, it follows the story of Aang, who is from the Air Nomads, and is essentially, he's the last of his people. The Fire Nation wiped out all of the rest of their, his culture. He ran away when he found out that he was the Avatar, ended up getting frozen, and was in, I think, the South Pole for a while until he was found by a young waterbender and her brother. And essentially what it does is it follows his journey between learning the elements and trying to prevent the Fire Nation from destroying the rest of the world. And what I really taken from this series is, in the later parts of the series, I think it's in book 3, each season is called a book, and in book 3 he goes to meet a spiritual practitioner who studied with the Air Nomads and has lived the Air Nomadic lifestyle, and he helps Aang to unblock and focus his chakras. So it brought in this whole spiritual dynamic and influence, and it takes a lot of information that's out there. So it really focuses on what is blocking your chakras and what helps your chakras flow, and how to let go of the things that are blocking it so that the channel of energy can flow better. And it's really about Aang being able to reconnect to his avatar state, which is the ultimate power that the avatar has, which allows him to bend the four elements, and they are that perfect union between the human and spiritual worlds. So it's really interesting about looking at energy work and energy work within our bodies. And even through the whole entire series, they look at each of the elements, the bending styles follow a particular martial arts. And I'll try to find an article that relates to all of them. And each of the elements also, when it was first brought into the world, I'm not going to say that because you might want to watch the series and it's kind of a little spoiler which I won't put out there, but what I can say is that each of the elements is taught, and the people who become masters of those elements really go and study to the natural embodiment of those elements and how they were the pinnacle of that element bending. So for fire, it's the dragons that are the masters of firebending. So anyone who wants to be a master or to excel in the element will go and see the dragons, which there aren't very many left in the world after a lot of the Fire Nation took them all and killed them off in battles and wars and stuff. For the Earthbenders, they have the badger moles, which are actually blind, and they use a sixth sense to interact with the world around them. So the Masters of Earth go and see the badger moles. For water, it was based off the pool between the moon and the tide. The moon and the sea, essentially, so the tide. And then it was embodied into two indwelling koi fish. And for waterbenders, it's really that relationship between the moon and the ocean. And then for airbenders, it was about the sky bisons, and they end up, air nomads, when they reach a particular age, bond with a sky bison, and that becomes their, like, essentially like a familiar for the rest of their life. Also, all the avatars have their own familiars as well. So in in Avatar: The Last Airbender, Aang has a sky bison. In Legend of Korra, which is the follow-on to Avatar: The Last Airbender, Korra has a polar bear dog, which is so adorable. But in Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's really about Aang's being an air nomad is highly spiritual. It's about dealing with human interaction and human relationships, and about really being spiritual but also having a physical relationship with the world. Whereas in Korra: The Last Airbender, Korra is absolutely physical. She can master the physical aspects of all the elements, but she's lacking that spiritual connection. So it was about Korra's spiritual journey and her marriage between the human and the spiritual worlds, and being that bridge between there. And it was really related to me in my practice. Like, how do I marry the physical and the spiritual practices together? It's all well and good being able to meditate and trance out into a spiritual plane, but how can I do that work within this world as well? So that series kind of really went through all of that for me. And then, what else do I have on my list here? Oh, as a child, I grew up with Captain Planet, and that's kind of really influenced my relationship with nature. And I recycle, I try to minimize the waste that I produce, and a lot of that is from Captain Planet. And it was a horrible, terrible, cheesy series that I went back and watched an episode, I think in the last year, and I was like, nope, I'm going to keep this as a beautiful, pristine childhood memory, as it being fabulous, because it was super preachy about so much stuff, and it was hilarious, and I can't go back and spoil that for myself. So I'm going to leave that as a beautifully fond memory. Sabrina the Teenage Witch. This was another thing that, when I was growing up, another series that I was exposed to, especially in my early days of witchcraft, and it was always, like, the lessons that I take from that was really about every action has a consequence, and you often see that in every single episode. Sabrina will use magic in some way or form to change something, and then she then has to deal with a mess or clean up a situation. And it's often, like, in times when it's really for, like, petty personal gain sort of things. But when she does actually something for someone else, and it's selfless, and that's when a lot of it works out. So it's kind of knowing there are mundane ways to go about simple tasks, and magic isn't always the answer. And sometimes magic can complicate things even more. And then there's still, like, it's all, like, a lot of the series I watch are really about that. How can I use magic in an everyday world situation, and realizing that sometimes magic isn't the thing that needs to be happening in the everyday world. So it's that really finding a balance between all of that. What else did I have on here? The Worst Witch. That was another series that I grew up with, and it was, like, a lot of that, from what I remember with that series, was about finding ourselves and finding out. It was about Mildred, who I believe, yeah, Mildred was the main character. Mildred Hubble, if I remember correctly. And it was really about her journey as an identity and finding who she was. She wasn't the best student at the school. She didn't excel in everything, and she was clumsy and klutzy, and was dubbed the worst witch quite often. And then it was really about her finding herself and finding her place. And when she finally found out what her power was, it kind of really changed her world. And it was about, finding talent and finding ourselves. And I think that's it for that one. But yeah, that's all I kind of came up with here. I'll put a list of all the ones that I could think of below. But my battery light is now flashing. But that's it for this week. So for you guys, much love and blessings. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Put any series or shows or movies that I should watch in the comments below. And if you loved any of the things I talked about, if you like Avatar, let me know which bending nation you are. I'm totally an earthbender, even though I'm a Gemini and should be an airbender, but I just want to make pretty jewelry and play with rocks. In Harry Potter, totally a Ravenclaw. So yeah, let me know which house and which bending nation you would be in the comments below. But yeah, for this week, much love and blessings. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will see you next week. Mwah!